So this is more or less a Q&A, and it's prompted by Dice Ghost, who sent me an email after their latest video. I mentioned them in one of my videos, and we had a bit of a commentary on each other's stuff. So they write that they are taking some flack from historical gamers for their video where they had a quad multi-launcher battle report, calling it the Alpha Strike list build. Alpha Strike multi-rocket launcher video. And as they say, the purpose of the video was to highlight that it is possible in bolt action, but they at the same time say that they feel that it's not necessarily the multi-rocket launchers that are the problem, but more or less the snapping 2 of 4 to 5 dice that you can do. So I thought I'd just do a little bit of commentary on that, and do that while I know that last Sunday they released a video where they sort of do a little bit of commentary on this whole debate about multi-rocket launchers. So I'm doing this before they're actually releasing their videos on multi-rocket launchers, so we shall see. I think I'll send it to them so they have a chance to respond to my video as well, maybe. Anywho, so I have a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And I'll get that for you, just a sec. Right, so this is going to be my Q&A about multi-rocket launcher spam. The question is more or less, I'm picking this out of their text, is: we seem to take some flack from more historical gamers. We just enjoy the game. I know that you've seen the quad multi-rocket launcher report we put out 2 weeks ago. It was met with mixed reviews. Well, I know that feeling. You do get on some videos people disliking or whatever. As soon as you put something out, you're liable to offend some people. It's what happens. I know a lot of other competitive gamers and players who put out content have actually thought about stopping because of the quote-unquote hate mail that they get sometimes. And I think it's unconstructive. Most of it is anyway. I really like when I get hate mail, if it's constructive and if people actually say more than just you're stupid or whatever, this is dumb, or so if, at least for my channel, if you have issues with something that I'm saying, ask me a question about it, and I will gladly try and respond to why I think what I'm saying is right. Because I don't just say random stuff, although I do make quite a lot of mistakes. Of course I do, I'm human. So what do I think about this? Well, it made me think about why people might dislike me. And I've looked over this a couple of times recently. And if I go through the, and it's not really hate, it's like the dislike comments, then there are a couple of things that stand out. One is what I would interpret as an emotional reaction against competitive bolt action. I've seen this multiple times in many of the chat forums and Facebook pages where non-competitive players have an emotional negative reaction as soon as they see anything to do with tournament play or competitive play or what they term gamey or whatever. And that emotional reaction, I'm not sure why they have that, but they clearly have it, and they immediately start something confrontational, or it quite often happens that some of these historical players, whom I think are absolutely sweet guys, most of them are absolutely sweet guys who don't normally, like confront people and are aggressive. I think perhaps some of the explanation is that they feel that their way of playing is being destroyed by it. And I don't agree. I think you can enjoy the game in multiple ways, but I'll get back to that. I think also one of the things that people can dislike about me is the lack of historical verisimilitude. verisimilitude. So believability, right? For those who are not native English speakers, even I, verisimilitude. It is when you break immersion, right? And I am not that fussed about breaking immersion for World War II. I view this as a game, like I viewed Warhammer 40k as a game. That's it. That's it for me. I've talked about that in a recent video, and some people may not like that. And I completely understand that. We all have different requirements for verisimilitude, right? There are different things that we need in order to believe what we're seeing to be something we can enjoy. So emotional reaction against, lack of verisimilitude, and fear for their own enjoyment. Now, that people fear that their own way of enjoying the game will be ruined by someone enjoying it in a different way, that I think is wrong. I think it can only happen when you fail to set expectations for one or both parties. So if you go to an event and you expect it to be enjoyed in one way and it's a complete different way, then both parties, both the competitive players and the historical players, rivet counters, whatever we call them, people who do play the game for a different reason, they can both feel like their enjoyment is being taken away from them, right? So I feel like the most important thing that I try to take, and because I'm in one of these camps, it's difficult for me to say it in a way where the other camp listens to me, is that we can enjoy the game in many different ways, and that someone enjoys it in a different way from you does not destroy your enjoyment, right? That's my main point. I also think that my personality, how I come across on these videos, may put some people off. I have heard people say I'm arrogant or sound arrogant, that I talk down about other people. That's not my intention. But, you know, I don't know. Maybe I am arrogant. I don't know. I think I'm not. And people who know me say I'm not, but, you know, it could be. I try not to be. I try to be respectful. I try to talk about the issues and not the people. I may also use language that is not for everyone. I am a Dane. I live in Danish culture. We have a very specific way of being. We have a very dark sense of humor. We say stuff that other people might find offensive. We swear a lot. And I have terms about game that I'm using that some people find offensive. So I use the term noob basher about multi-rocket launcher spam. Some people find that highly offensive. I don't necessarily find it offensive. Offense for me is something to do with context. The context of why you're saying it, when you're saying it, and what you mean by a word. But that's me. I also make a lot of mistakes. And I'll freely admit this, I make a lot of mistakes. Especially about like reading rules. I recently read the FAQ live on video, and I misread stuff. Of course, that happens to all of us. We are human, so I make mistakes, and people may dislike that. And I've also had some people say that I sort of the quote was, "There is no deep knowledge." And I disagree. I think I know quite a lot about this game, but, you know, other people may think I don't. I hope that they know a lot then and will put out some of their knowledge for everyone to see. I really hope that, because I would like to hear what the deep knowledge is. I would enjoy gaining that as well. So if you think I'm dumb, or if I don't know what I'm talking about, please let us all know what you think. I think constructive conversation is really, really good. So why do people give Dice Ghost flack for putting out a video? I think a lot of what people can dislike about me, they can dislike about Dice Ghost here. They can dislike the way they play the game, that they're playing it in a competitive, gamey way. They can dislike competition as a whole, like playing the game as a competition and not being very fair and even Steven across the table and whatnot. They can dislike the breaking of immersion, the verisimilitude, or they can dislike the actual overpowered units that are being used. I think in some respects the armies used in that specific video were absolutely not overpowered. They had units there that were non-competitive, but they did have at least one block of units that was highly overpowered. And you can dislike that. Is that fair? You're allowed to dislike it, but is it fair that you give them flack for playing the game that way? Maybe not. I think we should maybe lay off a bit on calling out other people for being, I see this in my own videos sometimes, and I especially see this in the chat forums and on Facebook. There was recently one guy who posted MRLS that he was very sad about having recently bought a whole battery of multi-launchers for his army, and now they were nerfed and he couldn't play them anymore, and that sucked. And Warlord Games sucked for nerfing his armies, and people were giving him all kinds of crap. So not actually commenting on the issue being that one guy felt like the changes that Warlord Games were making had him buying one set of units and then all of a sudden they were not good anymore, which is why a lot of us left other game systems, by the way. So the issue itself, I can completely understand. I can get on board with that. That is a problem when the rules change too fast and when nerfs come too fast, changes to your units, and you're buying units and then just putting them on a shelf because you're never going to use them. I understand that. But I also understand why people would say, well, I have trouble feeling sorry for you because what you were buying is completely gamey and overpowered. And that is because they dislike his playstyle. They dislike his units, right? Is it fair that they say that? No, it's not. But it's what it is. People are what they are. So the situation in the actual game that Dice Ghost was playing was that one player was playing Americans and they were deploying in their zones. Basically, they only played like 2 turns because the game was over by then. Completely over. So one player places a lot of American infantry units, mostly behind some houses. And the other player places 4 multi-rocket launchers with a CO opposite of that, looking at those houses, looking at that grouping of units in the enemy deployment zone. And then the first dice he snaps to and shoots all 4 multi-rocket launchers and destroys 4 units out of 17 possible hits. 7 units out of 17 possible hits. He had so many 6s. But even if he didn't roll that well, that luckily, that would have been a devastating alpha strike, even if it was like half the number of units. He took out large infantry groupings, he took out support units, he took out a tank, a Darker Steward was just outright destroyed, and he took out a jeep with a bazooka team in it, which was more or less extremely important to keep the German armor from just advancing into the American deployment zone. So that first Alpha Strike completely demolished the American players' army, basically. So, what went wrong? Well, the opponent made a lot of mistakes because he didn't know how to play against multi-rocket launchers. That's one thing. The table was way in favor of the multi-rocket launchers, and the power level of those multi-rocket launchers may also be wrong, which is why they were recently nerfed a bit, right? So the opponent's rookie mistakes was, one, he clumped up his units. They were all clumped up. Shooting at one house, he could the multi-rocket, the German player could hit 9 units or something like that. That's insane. You should never allow your opponent that. So clumping up units is a bad mistake, especially clumping up near houses, because multi-rocket launchers can shoot at houses. Again, bad mistake. And he didn't really utilize reserves or outflank, which is what you have to do. If your enemy has this much of a bombardment, and I've played against armies that had 4 multi-rocket launchers, if they have this much to bombard you with, you have to spread out. You have to go into reserve or outflank. You have to not clump up your army on the table. Because if you do, this will happen. So that's the game situation, and yeah, that was a brutal first turn, and then turn 2, more or less, the German player could just repeat it with a lot less targets. So the game was over by turn 2, mid turn 2. Now, all this said, I've stated multiple times, I don't think you should hate on people just for enjoying the game in a way you don't like. I don't like multi-rocket launcher spam. I've actually said this on videos before. I got a lot of flack for saying that because you're a competitive player, you're not allowed to dislike. Yes, I am allowed to dislike, and I'll explain why I dislike it, and you can judge for yourself. I have no problem people playing very powerful units. I think multi-rocket launchers, one, has a tactical effect. It encourages the opponent to spread out. I sort of like that. That's a tactical element. It adds decision making and therefore skill to what the opponent has to do in order to not give you too much of a chance of just rolling 6s. 2 multi-rocket launchers, then you are starting to punch way above your weight. A multi-rocket launcher is very cheap for what it can actually do. And what it does is it enables you to be lucky. Much more lucky than you deserve, right? Because 3 or more, it takes away player skill. At that point, you're playing for rolling those 6s. You're not playing to outskill your opponent. Because you can just repeat what we saw here. This is not skillful, although there is a tactic to the deployment. But as soon as you've learned that, then you can just repeat it every single turn. There is no skill there, and you do it as the first dice you get every single turn, and you have that company commander sit there, give you a 4+ morale. You're never not shooting, and if you miss one of them one time, they'll go down. And okay, so even though it got a lot of pins before the latest fact, now it only gets 1. By the way, I mean. It's never not shooting with the company commander sitting there giving the morale bonus, right? So it takes away player skill. It also means that your opponent's skill doesn't matter as much. The choices your opponent gets is spread out, outflank, and go down. That are the 3 choices. There are no maneuvers you can make. There's nothing you can do where you can mitigate this, right? There's nothing you can do. So for me, that takes away player skill. And I play because I want to match skills with my opponent. If I could play games where my playstyle was still a factor, where what I like to do was still a factor, and we both could basically play the same list, I would do that. Because although I do like planning and list tweaking, all of that, it's a part of what I think is skill, but I play to match my skill, both pre-game and in-game skills against my opponent. And I think a lot of multi-rocket launchers lowers the effect of skills on the game, and it increases the effect of random chance. So can multi-rocket launchers win? Because one of the things that Dice Ghost was doing here was they wanted to put out this video, show that an Alpha Strike multi-rocket launcher thing was possible, and then take it to a tournament to see if it could actually win tournaments, because someone, including me, had said that multi-rocket launchers can't win tournaments. So can it win? Yes, it can definitely win games, right? You have this one game, you roll a lot of sixes, and then the enemy army just disappears in a red mist, right? And potentially you could do that multiple times, but repeating that is not very likely. So that's why I say, if we look at who wins tournaments, then it's typically the same players, which means that there are some players who are very skilled. It is not the players who bring multi-rocket launchers. We have yet to see a multi-rocket launcher spam list be the individually best player in any tournament I have reviewed. And I've reviewed most of the competitive ones over the last 3-4 years. It doesn't happen. So can you win individual games? Yes, you can absolutely crush opponents in individual games. Can you win 3-5 games over a weekend? Potentially not. Not down to the multi-rocket launchers anyway. Then it's other stuff in your list or your skills that will have to bring you to the finish line. So my thanks goes out to Dice Ghost for sending me their thoughts on all of this. And I just want to repeat again that there are many ways to enjoy the game of bolt action. They are all equally valid. Playing competitively is just mine. Hating multi-launchers is just mine. You figure out what you like. That's it for me. Cheers.